pleasure to be here. I've got to say, first of all, friends, that the developers in Holland have probably been one of the most innovative and exciting communities for us to work with since we started many years ago. We've gotten all kinds of very, very valuable feedback from and ideas and sometimes criticisms from the developers in this community, which have helped us tremendously to build a much better service for all of our customers around the world. So I'm going to spend today talking a few minutes about what GetJar does, for those of you who may not be familiar with us, and how we provide monetization opportunities for mobile developers. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about 3 trends that we see in mobile development and a few specific tactics that you can take to address them. First, to talk about GetJar, let's see, it's down here. Perfect. Okay, thanks. We're about 75 million downloads a month now, up from 6 million when I joined the company back in 2007. So there's been some spectacular growth. But most recently, and probably someone will ask this question at the end, why is it that we've had a spike in the last few months? We've grown about 40% in the last few months, principally due to a new ranking algorithm that we've installed for the organic traffic, that is the non-paid downloads in our system, in order to bring more of the long tail and more of the new applications into the fore to create more interest and more repeat use on the part of our consumers. So the concept here is that any developer who wants to start getting some traction can post his app on GetJar and get at least some downloads to try to get a feeling for how his app will perform. And this provides a much more democratic and equitable situation for discovery for developers, regardless of what kind of application they have. And you know, you may not know this, but 50% of the downloads from the iTunes store come from the top 60 apps, whereas 50% of the downloads from GetJar come from the top 1,000 apps. So we really try to focus on providing an opportunity for everyone to get some visibility within our system. And this new ranking algorithm, which is responsible for this spike, has really been successful in doing that lately. The main difference between GetJar and the other app stores is that we work with a lot of different operating systems, including some new ones that I've put up there that are evolving that you may be familiar with from your childhood. The virtual machine on the Etch-a-Sketch is something I'd keep a very close eye on if I were you. So we accept apps from all different operating systems, and the way that it works is that, and by the way, we have a lot of very interesting and well-known customers. I should mention that when you think of mobile developers on app stores, normally you think of people building apps and that is their main business. One of the things that we see in our business is that there are a lot of large web companies and a lot of brand advertisers that are now actually using our service to promote their brand or their web service in addition to the mobile developers. This is creating a much more dynamic and interesting opportunity for all kinds of people to get traction in mobile applications. An example, for example, of one of these is a company called Snap2. Now, it's important that I mention that you can post your app on GetJar and you can be the #1 app on GetJar and you never have to pay us anything. It's not required to pay GetJar for placement. But we do have developers who, once they've posted their app and they get a lot of downloads, they have a business model where a new user for them is worth $1 or $2 or some amount. And so we have a system called pay-per-download, which allows people to bid for additional downloads. It works very similar to Google AdWords or any sort of online CPA campaign. And it allows people to profitably attract new users through our system. So Snap2 is one example of a developer that's used this. Google is an example of a large web company that does a lot of work with us as well. So moving on to these trends that I'm going to talk about today. The first is that we see app distribution, at least in our case, moving outside of GetJar into all kinds of places that we never would have imagined. And I'll show you some examples and give you some tactics that might be valuable for your business. Secondly, we've seen the mobile web still very much alive and well, and we're trying to bring the mobile web into the app business with a couple of tactics that might be also useful for those of you whose business does work with the mobile web. And then we're going to talk for a moment about fragmentation and a couple things we're doing to try to deal with fragmentation, which is something we all just have to live with. but I think something that probably is a benefit to us because fragmentation implies that you have an open ecosystem, and that is very important to foster innovation. So you see a lot of websites trying to drive mobile use from their web traffic, and this is an example from CNN. And these people are doing the best they can with the tools they have. But you can see a relatively complicated set of choices, if you can read this, for the user to try to determine what his handset is. And they don't get very good conversion from this. This is ESPN, which has a similar situation. Again, dealing with the tools that do exist today, walking the user through a relatively torturous process of determining how to get ESPN on his mobile phone. There are cases where, Kayak is an example, you see this on a lot of websites, where there certainly are improvements to this, but there are two fundamental problems with this situation. First, Kayak probably paid some amount of money to get that user to their website, and now they're driving the user away from their website in order to convert him to mobile, which is not an optimum thing to do. And secondly, there's still some relatively complicated instructions down here regarding Symbian downloads, whether it's signed, not signed. We have a fellow in the States who came to be very famous during our last election called Joe the Plumber. Has anybody heard of Joe the Plumber? Okay. Joe the Plumber is not going to get through this page. Okay. And if you're trying to get the Joe the Plumbers from Indonesia and India and Southeast Asia as well, they won't get through that page either. So we work with Facebook on a solution to this problem, and this is something we introduced many months ago, and we've been quietly talking about it. I'd like to make sure everybody knows about it today. The first concept is push people to your mobile site. In this case, Facebook's doing this with an SMS call to action. And the second thing to do is once they're on your mobile site, offer them an app, and then push them to something we call the app download page, which is essentially the page you already get on GetJar, except we've removed our branding so that it's a white label page. This does two things. First, it keeps him on your site, and second, it doesn't let the user make any decisions about mobile, because once his phone hits that site, we detect what phone he has and serve the right version of the app for that phone. So the decision and the traffic problems are pretty much eliminated. We've just last week introduced a new feature where every app on GetJar now has one of these app download pages in a very simple URL structure, which is just getjar.com/appname. So that's an example from Facebook, and you can see the traffic and the download traffic that, these are their download numbers, they're publicly available, that jumped as a result of them implementing this, which is a very valuable experience for them. This is PhotoBucket, which has done the same thing. We have probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 companies doing this now, and we recommend anyone who has an app on GetJar who might have web traffic that they could drive to do this, because there's no charge for the downloads that come from this system. Fandango is a well-known movie site in the States that's also doing the same thing. So next, people started doing things with this app download page that we never expected. For example, Connected is an app that just arrived on GetJar but got 600,000 downloads in the course of 5 days by tweeting this URL. Now you think about it, it's really hard to include the Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, OV URLs for your app in one tweet. They just won't fit. But you can do that with this. Secondly, all your followers on Twitter have different kinds of phones. And so how are you going to know which one which app to may have nothing to do with GetJar, could still use this infrastructure, and again, all these downloads are free. The second thing I'd like to talk about today is, to continue on the app distribution part, I should mention that we do have a number of carriers who have decided that in addition to building their own community, they would like to broaden the experience with other app stores. We struggled a lot with how to do this, and we finally came up with an XML feed and an API which allows basically anyone, whether it be a developer or a handset OEM or a carrier, to import the GetJar App Store into their business. We pay revenue share in a Google AdSense type model with this, and this has been something that's helping developers to get a tremendous amount of additional traffic in certain areas where carriers still dominate the traffic flow. I'd like to talk for a moment about the mobile web. The mobile web is very useful. The problem is how to get people to go to your site and stay on your site. And users generally don't bookmark sites. Can you read that? They don't bookmark sites on their mobile browsers. This is a problem. You can send someone to a mobile site by asking them to click on a CPC ad or perhaps on the URL in an SMS message, but they may or may not ever come back to that mobile site. And so the question is, how do you get people to repeat and stick with a mobile site? And so we developed a solution which is based on the assumption that people like to push buttons. People just like to push buttons. Make it easy, just let them push buttons. So the concept is to convert a mobile site into an app, which is basically bookmarked on the phone screen. And so we have a little service called the GetJar mobile site shortcut, which we build in a variety of operating systems. We offer for free. The developer simply needs to upload his application to the upload his mobile site URL to GetJar, and we create this app for him automatically and post it on GetJar for download. And the result is that mobile sites have a lot more reach and repeat, almost as much as apps do. And there are an awful lot of people using this now to great effect. In fact, what many people do, and this is a tactical suggestion that might be useful to some of you, they might build an app in iPhone, they might build an app in Android, but they might not want to try to tackle Java. So they use the mobile site shortcut as a way to increase the coverage of all of their service for various kinds of devices that they may not have built apps for. Our service will detect the phone and automatically serve the richest experience. If there is an app that exists for that phone, we'll serve the app. If not, we serve a mobile site shortcut so that everyone gets some sort of experience that with the brand or with the developer's product. Last question I'm going to talk about today is how to navigate device fragmentation. I'm taking a page from HSBC here. Is this an ugly swamp or is it a vibrant ecosystem, right? And the question is fragmentation a good thing or a bad thing? It's a philosophical debate we can go through for a long time. We fall out on the side of fragmentation being a good thing because we have a lot of ways to help developers deal with it, and we believe that it fosters innovation. However, it's still complicated to deal with, so we have this little boat that helps you navigate the swamp. I used to work in the marine business and have a lot of friends in that business here in Amsterdam, so I put that just to remind everybody of that. We call it a conversion API. This conversion API is designed to deal with the problem that developers spend money marketing apps that eventually don't install on certain phones. And Android will become as fragmented as BlackBerry or Symbian or perhaps even Java, and that's already happening. If you talk to a lot of iPhone developers that are branching out from iPhone, they immediately run into this with Android today. So the solution is to call a conversion API from the app to track back the success of the app installation so that you know which, so that you can focus your marketing resources on phones and on operating systems that are installing correctly versus those that are not, and fix the ones that are not converting well. And this is not designed to compete with Flurry or in-app analytics. This is designed to be more in the front end to track conversion analytics so that you as the developer have an idea of where to deploy your marketing resources. So I've got about a couple minutes left. Before I go into questions, let me just say that we are having the first ever cross-platform app award called the Gettys. The deadline for submission for your app is on the 25th of June, so it's just a couple weeks away, so please hurry over to the Gettys. I've got the URL on the next slide to submit your app, and there'll be some cash prizes. The winners will be announced on July 12th at the Mobile Beat conference in conjunction with VentureBeat in San Francisco. And so I think that's all I've got. There's a couple URLs there where you can pick up more information. And oh, I'll do one thing that no app store will ever do for you. I'll give you my phone number. So if you have questions, you can call me, okay? I'm not hiding from anybody, and we specialize in free advice. So if you want free advice, just feel free to call me anytime. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Bill. Let me not. Okay. The first thing that comes to my mind after seeing your presentation is that you basically help developers to optimize to the problems that Vincent was talking about, the fragmentation. You try to help them overcome that, make it easier and to focus on their core activity, and that is developing cool apps, right?
Right.
We were talking yesterday and the days before about the position of the App Store in the value chain, and the whole mobile value chain, and how that is changing with the mobile web getting bigger. How soon do you see the Apple App Store, for instance, or the Android market, well, maybe even becoming obsolete because everyone starts to bookmark the web pages, or that the mobile Safari browser has an easy function to actually make a button out of that web page? Do you see that happening in the very near future?
No, I don't. If you look at, I see it happening potentially for some phones, but I think that if you see now, one of the largest growth segments of phones are actually Java phones that have touchscreens. These are kind of in between what you see on the smartphone and what you see on the traditional feature phone. Folks who buy those phones for $20 many times are not sophisticated enough, even with these new browsers, to go in and do any kind of bookmarking. In a couple years they will, but I think that eventually people will be browsing a lot more. They will be able to bookmark things, and eventually perhaps the mobile site shortcut won't be needed, but it certainly is today.
And before we take one question out of the audience, one of the reasons Apple has come up with the App Store is they can drive revenue, because it's much harder to monetize a mobile website than it's to monetize a mobile app. How do you see that influencing your business?
Well, we believe that there has been for a long time, a model where the distribution funnel for applications or for any kind of mobile service has been restricted. Originally, it was just the carrier deck, where you had to go and buy a lot of drinks for carriers in order to get your app placed on their deck. I can tell you right now, people still do that today with BlackBerry and Google and Apple. You don't have to do that with us. We have the paper download system, so there's no drink buying required. And we just feel it's a more democratic way to approach discovery and let people build a business. Secondly, we find that it's better to get the app on the phone and find a way to make money afterwards than to put a barrier between the adoption of the app and the user by charging for it. So we believe, and we will install a payment system here next year, which will be principally in-application payments, because we feel that's the only way to deal effectively with customer service is to get the app on the phone, get it running, and then after that, find a way to monetize it. Because otherwise you deal with a tremendous amount of, because of the fragmentation, a tremendous amount of customer service that is a waste of money.
Okay, Yuri?
Hi, nice presentation. I have a question about the fragmentation problem, and I've seen some operators, I think 25 operators in the world in February announced like an application wholesale alliance to work with the developers and avoid the fragmentation. I don't know if I should ask you about that, but I just want to know, do you see any effect or positive effect of this initiative, or what would you see about having the operators trying to work on a framework to facilitate developers of applications?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, anything that can help improve. I mean, Google also just recently introduced app search, by the way. So, and Apple, frankly, with all of its marketing money, has helped us tremendously in just driving awareness of the concept. So anything that anybody wants to do to contribute positively to the performance of mobile apps is welcome to us, because it's going to help our business eventually, perhaps introducing new standards that we also can adopt. So, we welcome any initiative like that.
Any questions?
One, two. Dirk?
Yeah, one advantage of downloading your app from the official Android market or from the App Store, well, especially for Android, is that you get notifications of updates.
Yeah.
What do you advise people to post their Android app directly on GetJar, or to just post a link to the app on the Android market, because then updates wouldn't work anymore?
Right. So that's a feature that's on our roadmap for Q3. We will be making that available. people who want higher conversion and therefore lower cost of acquisition always post their apps on GetJar. The only apps that we don't host are those on iTunes, where we do redirect. In every other case, we host the apps because the developer prefers to do that because he gets better conversion. So this particular issue of updates we have in our plan to solve now soon.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for being in Amsterdam. So we're moving on.